grade 1-2s. Since I'm reading The Wild Robot today, I thought I would read it to you out in the wild. So I'm actually at Griffith Woods Park today, which is not too far from our school. And I'm just sitting here by the river, and I'm going to read to you a little bit of The Wild Robot. We're on chapter 70. And hopefully you can enjoy listening to some birds chirping behind me, and who knows what else we might see while we're out here. Okay. Chapter 70, The Hunt Begins. While his flock distracted the Reccos, Brightbill darted around behind them and desperately searched for buttons. He had once shut down his own mother with a click, but now he would do the same thing to the intruders. But he found no buttons on these robots, only smooth surfaces. Clearly, the Reccos were not designed to be shut down so easily. Giant hands swung through the air, and the geese were swatted away. Loudwing was plucked by her foot and flung to the ground. She crawled into the weeds as the others scrambled up and over the trees. A quick scan by the robots revealed that Roz was gone. The three Reccos turned and marched back to the airship. The door hummed open, and the robots disappeared inside. And when they stepped back into the meadow, each was holding a silver rifle in his hands. The hunt for Roz was on. Without speaking, the Reccos marched away from one another, fanning out in their standard search pattern. Recco 1 marched straight toward the southern tip of the island. Recco 2 marched straight up the mountainside. And Recco 3 marched straight into the forest. Chapter 71, The Forest Assault. Recco 3 marched through the forest with steady, stomping strides. His blocky head swiveled from side to side, scanning for any sign of Roz. But he was distracted. You see, everywhere the Recco went, he was met by shrieking animals. He didn't know it, but he was in the midst of a coordinated assault. Swooper hooted orders from above. Hawks, sparrows, owls dive in front of his eyes. Fink barked orders from below. Hares, weasels, foxes dash between his legs. The forest was seething with an army of wild animals, distracting the robot, luring the terrible thing deeper into their trap. Chit-Chat leaped out from the branches and clawed at the robot's eyes, yelling, "Anyone who shows up on our island and tries to take my friend's mother away has a big problem, which is me." Then she leaped back into the branches. The robot pointed his rifle at the squirrel and pulled the trigger. A blazing beam of light shot through the forest and sent tree limbs crashing to the ground. It grazed poor Chit-Chat, singeing the end of her tail, but she ignored the pain and scurried up to the safety of the canopy. With each stride, the ground grew a little softer, and the robot sank a little deeper until he was up to his waist in thick, heavy muck. His churning legs slowed to a stop, and he stood there computing whether to move forward or backward. Recco 3 was now an easy target. "Begin the bombardment!" ordered Swooper. The sky darkened as a swarm of birds descended from the treetops. They swooped past the robot and splattered his face with their droppings. Bird after bird swooped and splattered, and the Recco's eyes were instantly caked in filth. "Don't let up!" screeched the owl. "Give it everything you've got!" There seemed to be an endless stream of birds with an endless amount of droppings. Recco 3 let go of his weapon and wiped his filthy face with both hands. That was the moment the fuzzy bandits had been waiting for. They dashed out from the weeds, snatched the rifle with their nimble hands, and dragged it away. Tawny and Crown Point looked on from the underbrush. The buck lowered his head, and the raccoons carefully placed the rifle upon his antlers. Then the deer and the raccoons slipped into the shadows. By the time Recco 3 realized his weapon was missing, it was too late. He let out a sad electronic tone. And then, as the birds continued their bombardment, the robot turned and blindly trudged back through the muck. It was now time for the final stage of the plan. Broadfoot, the bull moose, emerged from the trees and stood directly in the path of the blinded robot. Recco 3 had no idea that his every step brought him closer to the mighty animal. When the robot was in range, Broadfoot turned and kicked back with his powerful hind legs. There was a sharp crack, and dung sprayed from the Recco's head. The moose kicked again. Crack! And the robot's head flopped to one side. A tear in his neck exposed a tangle of silver tubes. But Recco 3's legs kept pumping, so Broadfoot kept kicking. He pounded the robot's head with his heavy hooves, denting and crushing it into an ugly shape. And with one final crack, the head broke loose, soared through the air, and squelched into the muck. The headless robot fizzled and smoked. His legs ground to a halt, and he never moved again.